told you that ordering a side salad instead of like a massive plate of fries isn't actually an act of willpower at all?
Right.
Like, it's not about discipline. It is, in fact, a biological hack designed to trip a very specific set of microscopic stretch sensors in your stomach.
Exactly. Yeah.
And doing that basically short-circuits your brain's hunger signals before they even have a chance to demand more food.
It completely flips the script on how we view diet and discipline. I mean, really.
Totally.
We spend so much time, moralizing our food choices, treating every single meal as this test of our inner strength.
Like, it's a character flaw if you want a burger.
Right. When in reality, we are just operating a very complex piece of biological machinery without actually reading the manual.
Welcome to today's deep dive. We are thrilled to have you with us.
Yes, thanks for being here.
Today, our core mission is taking all of that pristine theoretical laboratory knowledge about nutrition, biology, metabolism, all of it.
The textbook stuff.
Exactly the textbook stuff. And we're figuring out how to actually apply it in the messy, chaotic, completely unpredictable real world.
Because usually when we talk about scientific research, there's this underlying expectation of a perfectly sterile environment, right?
For sure. You picture a lab with exact measurements down to the milligram.
Right, where every variable is controlled.
Yeah.
And we desperately want human nutrition to look like that laboratory.
We really do. We want an app on our phone to tell us exactly what to eat.
Down to the decimal point.
Yeah. And we expect our bodies to just, respond like a calculator. You input the data, you get the predictable output.
But then you step out of that lab and into everyday life, and that pristine fantasy just completely shatters.
Because you, listening right now, you do not live in a metabolic isolation chamber.
No one does.
You live in a world where someone inevitably brings a box of fresh glazed donuts into the office every single Friday morning.
Right. Or you visit your family and your mother or your grandmother gets genuinely offended if you don't take a second or third helping.
Oh man, the 12-hour cooked meal, you can't say no to that.
You really can't. Or, you find yourself standing in the middle of your kitchen at 11 o'clock on a Tuesday night.
We have all been there.
The house is quiet, the fridge door is wide open.
Staring into the cold light.
Exactly. And you aren't even physically hungry, but you're desperately searching for something to soothe that low-level hum of anxiety from a stressful workday.
Yeah, you're just staring at a jar of mustard, hoping it magically transforms into a slice of cake.
It never does.
It never does. You eat at restaurants where a massive warm bread basket arrives right when you are at peak hunger.
And you navigate weddings, birthdays, long overdue dinners with friends.
And the fundamental reality we are exploring today is that all the textbook biology, the hormones, the macronutrients, the digestive enzymes, it all has to function in that specific messy world.
Not in ideal conditions. In your actual conditions.
Right. Which means this conversation cannot be about handing you a rigid, dogmatic list of rules to follow blindly.
Because that approach fails every single time.
Every time. So instead, we are looking at how to build a toolkit of adaptable principles.
Because you are a biological organism with specific metabolic needs on a Tuesday morning, but you're also a social human being.
You want to enjoy a Saturday night out without, carrying a food scale in your pocket.
Yeah, right, exactly.
But to build that realistic strategy, we have to clear the foundation first. We have to dismantle the single biggest mental trap that derails healthy eating.
And this is so crucial before we even look at what is sitting on your dinner plate.
Yeah, we have to examine the psychological architecture that governs how you view that plate. The core idea here is that the enemy of your health is not a slice of pizza.
No.
The enemy is perfectionism.
What's fascinating here is the psychology of nutritional perfectionism, because it is so deeply counterproductive.
How so? Like, we see this behavioral loop constantly, right?
All the time. A person decides they're going to get healthy or eat clean.
Usually a grand declaration made on a Sunday night.
Always a Sunday night. They completely overhaul their diet, aiming for absolute, unblemished perfection.
Right. So day one is flawless. They're a beacon of discipline. Day two, they are practically glowing.
Day three, they feel like an Olympian. Every macro is tracked. Every temptation is just completely ignored.
But inevitably, day four arrives.
And on day four, the real world intrudes.
There's a surprise birthday gathering at the office. Or maybe they're stuck in traffic and miss their meal prep window.
So they grab a pastry from a coffee shop. It's a minor deviation. Biologically, it is a drop in the ocean.
Just a few hundred calories, a tiny blip on the radar of a whole week.
But to the perfectionist mindset, it is not a blip. It is a catastrophic systemic failure.
The illusion of the perfect streak is broken.
Exactly. And when that streak breaks, it triggers this highly documented psychological phenomenon. We call it the what the hell effect.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the what the hell effect, I find it so universally human that it's amazing psychologists had to actually give it an official name in the literature.
It's a classic form of cognitive dissonance. The brain cannot reconcile the identity of I am a perfect healthy eater with the reality of I just ate a chocolate croissant.
They just don't match up.
They don't. And the discomfort of that dissonance is so high that the brain just resolves it by abandoning the goal entirely.
So the internal monologue shifts instantly to, well, the streak is ruined, the day is ruined, what the hell, I might as well eat whatever I want now.
It's that rapid transition from I'll just have this one pastry to I'll order a massive pizza for dinner and I'll just start again tomorrow.
And then tomorrow turns into, well, the weekend is already here, I'll restart on Monday.
And Monday turns into next month.
It's astounding. One single pastry on a Thursday afternoon mentally authorizes the derailment of an entire month of nutrition.
It really is.
If we take this logic out of the context of food, isn't perfectionism in nutrition like getting a flat tire on your car?
Oh, I love this analogy.
It's like driving down the highway, you get a flat, and instead of just putting on the spare and continuing the drive, you get so mad that the drive isn't perfect anymore that you get out and slash the other 3 tires.
That is the perfect visualization of the mechanism at play.
Yeah.
You experience a completely manageable, localized issue. One flat tire or one unplanned dessert.
Right. Super manageable.
But because you're operating under a binary framework of flawless success or abject failure, you deliberately destroy the rest of the vehicle.
You slash the tires to justify calling a tow truck.
Exactly. Just like you binge on junk food all weekend to justify starting a new diet on Monday.
So for you listening right now, think about your own history with this. How many Mondays have you waited for?
How many times have you put your physical well-being on pause for 3 or 4 days?
Existing in this uncomfortable purgatory of overeating, just waiting for the calendar to turn over so you can have the illusion of a clean slate?
It creates a state of chronic emotional exhaustion. The perfectionist model just does not and cannot generate sustainable habits.
Because human life is inherently variable.
Exactly. You end up in this endless cycle of extreme rigidity followed by chaotic collapse.
You're either gripping the steering wheel so tightly your hands are numb, or you've let go entirely and are careening into a ditch.
There's no cruising altitude. It's all launch sequence or crash landing.
Right. So if perfectionism is just completely doomed as a strategy, if it's incompatible with our psychological wiring, what is the mathematical alternative?
We need a system that actually accounts for human nature.
For spontaneous social events, and for the simple desire to eat a piece of cake without having an existential crisis.
And that brings us seamlessly to the 80-20 rule. This is where we introduce practical mathematics into our daily behavior.
Let's get into the math.
The premise is straightforward but deeply impactful. If 80% of your dietary decisions are reasonable, nutrient-dense, and aligned with your goals,
then the remaining 20% doesn't negate your progress. I want to make sure we don't undersell this, because the core insight from the text here isn't just that the 20% doesn't ruin your health.
Right.
The argument is that the 20%, the Friday night pizza, the dessert at your best friend's wedding, the lazy Sunday morning croissant, that is the exact structural component that makes the 80% sustainable for decades.
That is the critical paradigm shift. The text explicitly states, flexibility is not a flaw in the system, it is the system.
I love that quote. Flexibility is the system.
When you look at long-term adherence to any behavioral change, rigidity is the #1 predictor of failure.
Because the 80-20 rule operates as a psychological pressure valve.
Right. The perfectionist seals the pressure cooker completely, and eventually the structural integrity fails, and it explodes.
And that explosion is the what the hell binge.
Exactly.
Yeah.
By deliberately designing a pressure valve into the protocol, you prevent the explosion.
Okay, let's break out the actual math from the source on this. Because it takes the concept from a vague, kind of inspirational idea into a highly actionable framework. Let's assume a standard structure of 3 meals a day.
So we are looking at 21 meals in the given week.
21 meals. Now, if we calculate 20% of 21 meals, we get roughly 4 meals.
4 individual meals every single week.
That means you have 4 distinct opportunities every 7 days where you can eat what you genuinely want.
Participate in any social gathering.
Enjoy your food without calculating a single macronutrient, without pulling out a digital scale, and without carrying an ounce of stress.
4 uncalculated, completely guilt-free meals. And for the other 17 meals of the week, you focus on high-quality fuel.
You focus on alignment with your biological needs.
When you partition your week like that, 17 high-quality, targeted meals and 4 flexible, unstructured meals, the overwhelming anxiety surrounding diet suddenly evaporates.
It feels incredibly liberating. I mean, 4 meals is a substantial amount of freedom.
It really is.
That covers a Friday night date at a nice restaurant, a Saturday afternoon barbecue with your neighbors, a Sunday family dinner, and you still have one flexible meal left over for a random Wednesday office lunch.
And we have to examine the psychological shift that occurs when you formalize this flexibility. When you mathematically build those 4 meals into your weekly architecture, you completely eradicate guilt.
And guilt is arguably the most toxic element to habit formation.
It absolutely is.
Yeah.
When you remove guilt from the equation, you chemically and psychologically alter your relationship with food.
You are no longer failing when you eat a heavy meal at a celebration.
Exactly. You are successfully, deliberately executing your 20%.
Okay, let me play devil's advocate here, though, because I can hear the objections forming from people listening.
Sure.
If I'm someone who struggles with self-control around highly palatable foods, doesn't planning to cheat 20% of the time just invite a slippery slope?
That's a common concern.
Right. Doesn't giving myself explicit permission to eat a burger and fries 4 times a week just keep my brain addicted to that junk food?
It is a completely valid fear, but it hinges on a misunderstanding of the framework. The text makes a very firm stance on this.
Oh.
First, we have to permanently delete the word cheat from our nutritional vocabulary.
The concept of a cheat meal.
Yes, it implies that you are doing something illicit, something morally wrong, that violates the sacred rules of your diet. The 80-20 principle is not about cheating. It is about intentional consistency.
It changes the posture from, like, rebellion to planning.
Precisely. Furthermore, the goal isn't to use those 4 meals to consume the maximum volume of ultra-processed garbage possible.
You're not trying to set an eating record.
Right. The goal is the removal of restriction around normal human experiences. If you know you can have a slice of pizza on Friday, the psychological urgency to binge on an entire pizza on Thursday vanishes.
Oh, the artificial scarcity is gone.
Exactly. And biologically, consistency over a period of years is what produces measurable changes in metabolic health. Not flawless perfection maintained for 3 miserable weeks.
Makes total sense. Okay, so we have dismantled the perfectionism trap, and we have established our mathematical safety net.
We have our 4 flexible meals.
But that still leaves us with 17 core meals every single week.
Right?
If we want to make those 17 meals work effortlessly, without needing a spreadsheet or an advanced degree in biochemistry, we need practical, non-obsessive strategies for what actually goes onto the plate.
We need heuristics. Mental shortcuts that guarantee a biologically sound meal without requiring excessive cognitive load.
And the most effective, scientifically grounded heuristic for building a meal boils down to 2 foundational rules from the text.
Yes, and the very first rule you apply to every one of those 17 meals is protein first.
Protein first, meaning before you think about the side dishes, the sauces, or the grains, you secure your protein source. The biological reasoning behind this is deeply complex, touching on satiety, thermal effect, muscle maintenance. Walk us through what actually happens inside the digestive tract and the brain when we prioritize protein.
Let's start with the thermal effect of food, often abbreviated as TEEF.
TEEF.
Okay. This refers to the amount of energy, the literal calories, your body must expend simply to digest, absorb, and process the nutrients you just consumed.
Because digestion is not a passive process.
Exactly. It is active mechanical and chemical work. And protein has the highest thermal effect of all 3 macronutrients by a massive margin.
How significant is the difference? Like, what are the numbers?
It's substantial. To process carbohydrates or fats, your body uses roughly 5 to 15% of the energy contained in the food itself.
Okay, 5 to 15.
But to break down protein, to sever those complex peptide bonds and convert them into usable amino acids, Your body has to expend 20 to 30% of the calories contained in that protein.
20 to 30%.
Yeah.
So you are essentially forcing your digestive system to work harder.
Yes, burning more internal energy just to process the meal.
So by simply choosing a chicken breast, a serving of lentils, or a piece of fish, you are inherently increasing your metabolic burn rate for the next few hours compared to eating an equivalent amount of calories from pasta or olive oil.
Yes, you are. But the thermal effect is really secondary to the real superpower of protein, which is satiety.
Satiety, that profound feeling of fullness.
Right, that biological satisfaction that signals your brain to terminate the eating process. When you consume protein, especially early in the meal, it triggers a robust release of specific satiety hormones in your intestinal tract.
Like which ones?
Hormones like cholecystokinin or
Hmm.
CCK and GLP-1.
Oh, GLP-1, which is the exact same pathway targeted by all the massive weight loss drugs currently dominating the medical field right now.
Exactly. Your body has an endogenous, natural system for releasing these hormones, and dietary protein is a primary trigger. These hormones travel through the bloodstream, cross the blood-brain barrier, and communicate directly with the hypothalamus, effectively telling your brain, we have acquired the critical structural building blocks we need. You can shut down the hunger drive now.
Which means your residual appetite aggressively drops.
Yes.
You naturally, without any conscious willpower, simply do not want to eat as much of whatever else is sitting on the table.
In practical terms, this means whether you are serving yourself at a buffet, looking at a menu in a restaurant, or standing in front of your open fridge on a Tuesday night, your very first cognitive step should be identifying the protein.
Eggs, poultry, fish, lean meats, tofu, tempeh, Greek yogurt, legumes. Find the protein and anchor the meal around it.
And it is vital to point out that prioritizing protein does not mean vilifying carbohydrates or demonizing fats.
Right, we're not talking about a hyper-restrictive zero-carb dogma.
Not at all. It is an additive strategy. You are simply ensuring that the biological trigger for satiety is always present on the plate.
It's about sequencing. By securing the protein first, you guarantee you are providing the raw materials necessary to maintain muscle mass.
Which is a critical factor for metabolic health that drastically declines as we age.
And secondarily, you auto-regulate your caloric intake for the remainder of the meal. You let your hormones do the portion control for you.
Which flows seamlessly into the second crucial plate-building strategy.
Right. Once we have secured the protein, we look at the rest of the plate. And the rule here requires a massive cultural shift. The text says, vegetables as the base.
Yes, making vegetables the base of the meal, not a marginal garnish.
Culturally, we have totally relegated vegetables to a very sad secondary role on the dinner plate.
They are the afterthought, a tiny pile of limp green beans or a handful of pale salad sitting next to a massive steak and a mountain of mashed potatoes.
They occupy the aesthetic role of a garnish. They are the obligatory toll you pay before you get to eat the real food.
Right. We want to invert that architecture completely. We need to make vegetables the physical foundation, the most voluminous, abundant part of the plate, and let the starches and fats act as the accompaniment.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because the mechanics of why this works relies on a very specific piece of biological hardware: the gastric distension receptors.
Yes.
How does a large pile of vegetables physically interact with the stomach?
This is pure mechanical biology. Vegetables, particularly non-starchy ones like leafy greens, broccoli, zucchini, bell peppers, they have an incredibly low caloric density.
Under 50 calories per 100 grams, typically.
Exactly. However, they contain a massive amount of physical volume, primarily composed of water and dietary fiber.
So they take up a ton of real estate.
Exactly. When you consume a large volume of low-calorie vegetables, they enter the stomach and physically push against the stomach walls. Your stomach lining is embedded with specialized mechanoreceptors, these gastric distension receptors. As the stomach tissue stretches, these receptors fire rapid electrical signals up the vagus nerve directly to the brainstem.
And what's the message they send?
The message is urgent and purely mechanical. We are physically expanding. We are out of room. Terminate eating immediately.
It is a literal tripwire for hunger. It has nothing to do with the calories, it's just a space issue.
And this is where we have to highlight a crucial vulnerability in our modern food environment. Ultra-processed foods are scientifically engineered in laboratories to completely bypass those gastric distension receptors.
How do they do that?
Take a standard bag of potato chips. It possesses a massive caloric density, hundreds and hundreds of calories. but it lacks any meaningful physical volume or structural fiber.
It melts down to almost nothing in the stomach.
Exactly. You can eat an entire family-sized bag of chips, ingest over 1,000 calories of pure energy, and your stomach walls barely stretch at all. The tripwire never gets crossed.
The mechanoreceptors remain completely silent.
Your brain assumes you haven't eaten anything of substance, so it keeps the hunger signals elevated.
But if you were to eat 1,000 calories of raw broccoli,
The sheer physical volume would likely rupture your stomach before you could finish it. The mechanical fullness is overwhelming.
plus that massive influx of fiber from the vegetables slows down the entire digestive process, creating a slow, steady release of energy into the bloodstream rather than a chaotic spike and crash.
While simultaneously feeding your gut microbiome, it is a compounding cascade of biological benefits. High physical volume, immediate mechanical fullness, delayed gastric emptying, and sustained energy.
I think about this plate building strategy like packing a suitcase for a long international trip.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it.
Imagine you start packing by tossing all your small, frivolous, unstructured items into the suitcase first. Your socks, your chargers, some souvenirs, a handful of loose toiletries.
They scatter everywhere and take up all the awkward space.
Right. Then you try to pack your big essential items. Your winter coat, your heavy boots, your thick sweaters. You are going to have a nightmare trying to force that suitcase closed.
It won't fit.
But if you pack strategically, if you put the massive winter coat and the heavy boots in first, they take up the vast majority of the volume.
And what happens to the frivolous items?
They naturally regulate themselves. Because the bulky essentials are already in place, you naturally have less room for the frivolous stuff without having to actively forbid it.
You only have a few small crevices left.
Exactly. That is what we are doing with our digestive system. If we pack the biological suitcase with the big essential items first, the high-quality protein and the massive volume of high-volume veggies, they physically stretch the stomach and occupy the space.
You naturally have less room for the massive portion of pasta or the extra dinner rolls.
Without ever having to consciously restrict them.
The architecture of the plate dictates the outcome before willpower ever gets involved.
Ugh.
We should add a very gentle, pragmatic note here. You do not need to force yourself to eat vegetables you despise. The goal is not suffering. Find the vegetables you actually enjoy, prepare them in ways that taste good, roast them, season them, grill them, and make those the foundation of your meal.
So a challenge for you listening right now, the very next time you prepare a dinner plate, mentally flip the proportions. Look at the side salad or the roasted carrots and move them to the center of the plate. Make them the main event.
And take the pasta or the potatoes and make them the side dish.
It is a tiny visual and spatial shift, but it completely hacks your gastric distension receptors.
It is a remarkably powerful tool for those 17 core meals. But as we transition from the plate to the glass, we encounter a massive blind spot.
Oh, the glass.
Yes, because while we are meticulously managing physical volume and protein to trigger our biological alarms on the plate, we frequently bypass those exact same alarms entirely with what we choose to drink.
Which introduces us to the stealthy, silent, and highly efficient threat of liquid calories.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the rule from the text is blunt. Don't drink your calories.
Making this one adjustment is quite possibly the highest impact, lowest effort change a human being can make to their metabolic health.
The underlying physiology completely supports that claim. The fundamental problem with liquid calories is that the human digestive system simply does not register them with the same biological gravity as solid food.
If we trace this back to the biology we just unpacked, this goes right back to the mechanical stretch receptors in the stomach, doesn't it?
Precisely. Let's look at the anatomy of the stomach.
Yeah.
At the bottom of the stomach is a valve called the pyloric sphincter.
The pyloric sphincter. Okay.
It regulates how quickly contents empty into the small intestine. When you eat solid food, especially food with protein and fiber, the stomach holds onto it. It churns it, breaking it down.
Right.
And the pyloric sphincter only opens slightly, letting the food out very slowly. This prolonged presence in the stomach keeps those stretch receptors firing, maintaining the feeling of fullness.
The food sets up camp in the stomach.
Yes. Liquids, however, do not require mechanical breakdown. When you consume a caloric beverage, it hits the stomach. And because it is already a fluid, the pyloric sphincter opens and allows it to pass rapidly into the small intestine.
The liquid essentially flushes straight through.
It does not remain in the stomach long enough, nor does it possess the necessary structural volume to meaningfully stretch the stomach walls.
So the receptors never fire, the alarm never goes off.
Exactly. The satiety signals generated by a liquid are practically imperceptible compared to a solid food of the exact same caloric value.
You can easily consume 400 calories of pure energy in the form of a soda, a sweetened iced tea, or a massive blended coffee drink.
And your brain will not register any significant reduction in appetite for your next meal.
Your body just absorbed an enormous payload of fuel, but your neurological fuel gauge still reads empty.
It's a huge disconnect.
I want to explore a very specific comparison because it highlights the illusion of healthy liquids perfectly. Let's look at a standard, ubiquitous breakfast item, a glass of orange juice. A normal 250 milliliter glass, just 8 ounces, contains roughly 110 calories and about 22 grams of sugar.
Which, purely in terms of caloric and sugar content, is virtually identical to eating 2 whole medium-sized oranges.
Right. The numbers on a spreadsheet are the same,
Yeah.
but the biological experience of consuming them is radically different. Let's walk through the mechanics.
Sure.
If you sit down at a breakfast table to eat 2 whole oranges, it is an activity. It takes time. You have to physically peel the rind. You separate the segments, you put them in your mouth, and you have to chew them extensively.
And that chewing the mastication process is critical. The physical act of moving your jaw sends early neural signals to the brain that food is arriving, beginning the satiety cascade before the food even reaches your stomach.
Fascinating.
Furthermore, when you eat the whole orange, all of the natural structural fiber is completely intact. That fiber acts like a net, trapping the sugars and forcing your digestive system to work to extract them,
Which dramatically slows down the absorption of fructose into your bloodstream.
and prolongs the mechanical stretch in your stomach.
It is a controlled time release mechanism. But what happens when we process those oranges into juice?
You destroy the mechanism. By juicing the fruit, you strip away almost all of the structural fiber. You eliminate the need for mastication. You are left with flavored water, heavily concentrated, with rapidly absorbing sugar.
You can swallow that 250 milliliter glass in 15 seconds flat.
Zero chewing. Zero fiber matrix. That payload of sugar hits your small intestine and floods into your bloodstream almost instantaneously, causing a rapid spike in insulin.
And because it cleared the stomach so fast, your mechanical hunger hasn't changed at all. You could drink that entire glass of juice and immediately eat a massive plate of eggs, bacon, and toast because your stomach feels completely empty.
You have consumed the energy of 2 oranges, but received 0 of the biological satisfaction.
Wait, let me play devil's advocate again and test the boundaries of this rule. Because the beverage industry is incredibly clever at marketing. I understand that a can of soda is just liquid candy. We know a standard cola is about 140 empty calories.
Right.
But what about the entire aisle of beverages marketed as optimal for health? What about vitamin-infused waters, or 100% natural cold-pressed fruit nectars, or agave-sweetened green detox smoothies? Aren't those healthy?
The text is extremely strict on this. The biological rule is absolute and does not care about marketing labels.
It doesn't care if it's agave.
No. If a beverage contains caloric sweeteners, whether that is high fructose corn syrup, organic cane sugar, raw honey, or pure agave nectar, it acts as an empty calorie of satiety.
Wow.
It does not matter how many synthetic B vitamins or antioxidants the manufacturer dissolved into the water. The core issue remains. You are inputting energy without generating fullness.
So the body absorbs the energy, but the brain doesn't register the meal.
Correct. The body absorbs the 400 calories from a smoothie without meaningfully reducing appetite for the next meal. If you drink a 150-calorie sweetened wellness beverage alongside your lunch, it will not cause you to eat 150 fewer calories of your sandwich.
It simply adds to the total energetic load.
Those calories exist in your total energy balance. They require insulin to process, and they can be stored as fat, but they contribute nothing to your feeling of satisfaction.
It's like paying an employee a full salary who never actually shows up to do any work at the factory. They drain the budget, but provide zero output.
That is exactly what liquid calories do.
Yeah.
Which is why switching from sodas and juices to water, unsweetened coffee, or tea is the highest impact, lowest effort change one can make without counting a single calorie.
It really is. So, to our listener, if you want the ultimate lowest hanging fruit in your daily routine, a change that requires absolutely zero meal prep, zero cooking skills, and zero complicated math, look closely at what is in your glass.
Just change the default liquid.
However, we cannot close the chapter on liquid calories without addressing one specific substance that requires an entirely separate conversation. because this particular liquid fundamentally hijacks the body's internal operating system.
Yes, we must discuss alcohol. From a metabolic and physiological perspective, alcohol presents a unique and highly disruptive challenge. The text describes it as a metabolic triple threat.
A triple threat. Okay, let's dive deep into the three unique problems alcohol presents. Let's start with the most basic element, its sheer caloric density. We all know the math for normal food. A gram of carbohydrate yields about 4 kilocalories.
And a gram of protein is also roughly 4 kilocalories.
Fat is the densest, coming in at 9 kilocalories per gram. Where does alcohol fit into this hierarchy?
Ethanol, the psychoactive component in all alcoholic beverages, contains 7 kilocalories per gram.
7. So it is nearly as energy dense as pure fat.
Exactly. And because it is consumed as a liquid, those highly dense calories accumulate with staggering speed.
Huh.
Consider the practical reality of socializing. A standard modest glass of wine, about 5 ounces, contains anywhere from 100 to 130 kilocalories.
A pint of craft beer can easily range from 150 to over 200 kilocalories.
And a mixed drink like a gin and tonic or a margarita, where you are combining the ethanol with sugary mixers, that can skyrocket past 250 kilocalories per glass.
And let's be honest about human behavior at a Friday night dinner party or a bar.
Huh.
Very few people are nursing a single 5-ounce glass of wine for 3 hours.
Right.
It is incredibly easy to consume 3 or 4 drinks over the course of an evening. If you have 3 margaritas, you have just ingested 750 calories before the appetizers have even reached the table.
You've consumed an entire large meal's worth of energy strictly in fluids.
The caloric load is massive.
It is. But interestingly, the sheer volume of calories is actually the least complex problem alcohol presents. The second part of the triple threat is far more disruptive to your biology. It involves a concept known as metabolic priority.
Metabolic priority. This is where the internal machinery really goes haywire. What exactly is that, and how does alcohol manipulate it?
We have to look at how the body categorizes what you ingest. While you might view a glass of Pinot Noir as a sophisticated way to unwind, your liver views the ethanol within it strictly as a toxic substance.
A toxin.
Biologically, it is a poison that must be cleared from the bloodstream to prevent neurological damage. Therefore, when your body detects alcohol, it triggers an absolute metabolic emergency.
It sounds the alarms.
It does. The liver, which is the master organ responsible for orchestrating your metabolism, drops almost everything else it was doing. It immediately shifts its enzymatic resources to prioritize the breakdown of ethanol.
To clear it out.
Right. It breaks it into a highly toxic intermediate called acetaldehyde and eventually into acetate so it can be cleared. Because clearing the toxin is the highest priority for survival, other vital metabolic functions are forced to hit the pause button.
And the most significant function that gets paused is fat oxidation, the literal process of burning fat for fuel.
Yes. While the liver is frantically processing alcohol, the oxidation of lipids fat burning plummets. Clinical studies have shown that fat oxidation can drop by an astonishing 70 to 87% while alcohol is in the system.
70 to 87%.
The body almost entirely ceases to use fat for energy.
I want to make sure I have the mechanics of this locked in.
Right.
Let's use an analogy. Imagine your liver processing alcohol is like a busy factory.
Okay, I like that.
The workers are humming along, processing nutrients, and constantly throwing fat onto the furnace to burn as fuel to keep the factory running. The conveyor belts are moving smoothly.
Right.
Suddenly, a massive blaring fire alarm goes off. That fire alarm is the toxic alcohol entering the system. The factory workers don't just keep tossing fat onto the furnace while dealing with the emergency. They drop everything. They halt the conveyor belts, they completely extinguish the fat-burning furnace, and every single worker grabs a fire extinguisher to focus solely on putting out the ethanol fire.
That is a phenomenal representation of the biochemistry. The entire workforce shifts to triage. And this leads to a massive misconception that we need to clarify.
What's the misconception?
People often think that the calories in the alcohol magically convert directly into body fat. That isn't quite accurate. What actually happens is an issue of processing order. Because the ethanol must be processed first, the dietary fat and carbohydrates you consume during that meal are pushed to the back of the line.
Oh.
Since the furnace is turned off, the fat you would have been burning normally is left unburned, and your body has no choice but to shuttle it into storage, into your adipose tissue.
So it's not that alcohol turns to fat, but that the fat you would be burning is stored instead.
Exactly. So if you spent the entire day being incredibly disciplined, maintaining a slight caloric deficit, and then you enjoy 3 glasses of wine with a heavy dinner, the fat-burning benefit of your disciplined day is essentially suspended for hours while the liver fights the alcohol fire.
Wow. Okay, so we have the heavy caloric density and we have the halting of fat burning, what completes the triple threat.
The third element is neurological, and in many ways it is the most insidious. Alcohol acts as a central nervous system depressant, and its primary target is the prefrontal cortex.
The prefrontal cortex.
Yeah.
That is the evolutionary newest part of the brain, right? The part responsible for executive function, impulse control, and long-term planning.
The adult in the room.
The adult in the room.
Precisely. It is the part of your brain that remembers you have health goals, that calculates consequences, and that exercises restraint. As alcohol concentrations in the blood rise, the electrical activity in the prefrontal cortex is actively suppressed.
Disinhibition.
Yes, you feel relaxed, loose, and carefree. But in the context of a food environment, disinhibition is disastrous.
Because when the adult leaves the room, the toddler takes over.
Exactly. Under the influence of alcohol, your resistance to highly palatable foods evaporates. That breadbasket sitting in the center of the table suddenly looks irresistible. Your ability to calmly say no to the dessert menu disappears.
The logical voice that usually says, I don't need to order a large pizza at 1 a.m. is completely silenced.
Your defensive shields are completely down.
I've read studies showing that even when researchers strictly control for the calories contained in the alcohol itself, people simply consume a significantly larger volume of food when they are drinking compared to when they are sober.
It acts as a chemical catalyst for overeating. It creates a perfect storm. It provides empty, dense calories, it shuts down your fat-burning metabolism, and it neurologically lowers your guard exactly when you are surrounded by the most calorically dense foods available.
So what does this all mean? Let's ground this in reality for the listener. Are we concluding that achieving metabolic health requires absolute sobriety?
No, and framing it that way usually leads back to the perfectionism trap we dismantled earlier.
Right.
The text is clear. You don't have to quit drinking forever. But you must be an informed operator of your biological machinery. You have to respect the physiological cost of the ethanol. Having 1 or 2 drinks on occasion at a social event is something a healthy metabolism can easily handle.
The true danger lies in the normalization of alcohol. The habitual glass or 2 of wine every single night to unwind from work.
Yes, because biologically speaking, your liver does not have a calendar. It does not know that you had a stressful day and deserve a treat. It only knows that a toxic compound has arrived, the fire alarm has been pulled, and it must shut down fat oxidation yet again.
Which seamlessly transitions us into the specific environment where lowered inhibitions from alcohol are the most dangerous.
An environment perfectly engineered to make us overeat.
The modern restaurant. For anyone trying to align their health goals with the real world, the restaurant is the ultimate minefield.
It is the #1 environment where people report feeling completely out of control.
But we have to reframe how we view restaurants. A restaurant is not inherently evil, and eating out is a fundamental part of social life.
Right, a restaurant is simply an environment with a different set of variables than your home kitchen. Because you do not control the variables, you must change your strategic approach.
Let's break down strategies for eating out, starting with the most ubiquitous and brilliant ambush in the culinary world, the bread trap.
It is a masterpiece of behavioral psychology. Think about the biological timing of this event. You have traveled to the restaurant, you have waited for a table, and you finally sit down. Your blood sugar might be slightly low, and your appetite is peaking.
You are ravenous, and suddenly there is a basket of easily digestible, highly processed carbohydrates sitting 6 inches from your hand.
And you are distracted. You are looking at the menu, chatting with your companions, ordering a drink. You begin eating the bread mindlessly. The problem is not that bread is a toxic substance. The problem is the combination of intense physical hunger and mindless consumption.
By the time your actual meal arrives, you have already consumed hundreds of calories of starch, spiked your insulin, and you are still going to eat the entirety of the massive main course you ordered anyway.
So the tactical maneuver here requires a tiny moment of prefrontal cortex engagement. If you genuinely love the bread and want it to be part of your meal, politely ask the waiter to bring it with your main course so you consume it alongside protein and fiber.
Rather than as a ravenous, mindless appetizer.
Or if you know it's just a distraction, ask them not to bring the basket at all. Eliminate the environmental trigger.
Okay, that brings us to the actual menu. How do we navigate ordering without triggering the perfectionism trap?
We rely on the exact same heuristic we use at home, ordering with the protein and vegetable axis. No matter what restaurant you are in, Italian, Mexican, and American steakhouse, you can almost always locate an option anchored by a high-quality protein and accompanied by a vegetable or salad.
Let me push back on this, though. Let's say I'm out at a beautiful Italian restaurant with friends. Everyone is ordering rich, creamy risottos and handmade pastas. If I ask for the dressing on the side and skip the bread, aren't I just actively depriving myself? Am I ruining the fun of dining out?
The text addresses this perfectly. Ordering grilled chicken and salad isn't an act of mortification, it's an informed choice. That feeling of deprivation is a cultural artifact, and we need to dismantle it.
Right.
But more importantly, the difference between a light meal and a metabolic disaster often isn't the core ingredients, it's the invisible additions.
The hidden calories in sauces and dressings, the math here is shocking.
The math is terrifying. A restaurant kitchen's primary objective is flavor, not your metabolic health. And the easiest way to amplify flavor is by adding massive amounts of dietary fat, butter, heavy cream, seed oils.
So you might order a beautiful, healthy-sounding grilled chicken salad.
But if it comes drenched in a house-made Caesar or ranch dressing, loaded with croutons and cheese, the caloric density shifts violently. The difference between a salad with vinaigrette on the side and a fully dressed restaurant salad can be 400 to 500 kilocalories.
400 calories. That is the energetic equivalent of an entire second meal, completely hidden in the condiment.
Exactly. Because fat is 9 calories per gram, a heavy hand with the dressing ladle dramatically alters the math. Requesting your dressing or rich sauces on the side is a microscopic social friction that yields massive biological dividends.
You dip your fork in the dressing, then take a bite of the salad. You get the exact same flavor profile for 20% of the caloric cost.
Okay, I control the bread, I order the protein axis, I put the dressing on the side. What about the end of the meal? Handling dessert.
If everyone else is ordering dessert, what is the protocol?
If we refer back to the 80-20 rule, the protocol is situational awareness. If it is a random Tuesday lunch during the workday, you likely skip the dessert. But if you are at a true celebration, an anniversary, a phenomenal restaurant you've wanted to try for months, then you are operating firmly within your 20%.
It's a special occasion.
Order the dessert, eat it slowly, savor every bite, and most importantly, experience zero guilt. Guilt is infinitely more damaging to your long-term habits than the calories in a slice of cake.
But there is one more massive psychological hurdle we have to clear in the restaurant environment. It is a deeply ingrained behavioral loop that starts in childhood. Ignoring the cultural conditioning to finish massive portions.
The Clean Plate Club, it is a profound fallacy. Modern restaurant portions are not based on human biological requirements. They are artificially inflated to create a perception of massive value so the restaurant can justify the price point.
A standard pasta dish at a chain restaurant often contains 3 or 4 standard physiological servings.
Yet we are socially conditioned to feel intense guilt if we leave food on the table. We hear the echoes of our parents. Finish your plate. There are people starving in the world. It is a sin to waste food.
We need to fundamentally restructure how we define waste. The harsh truth from the text is that the waste did not occur at the moment you decided to leave half the meal on your plate.
No.
The waste occurred hours earlier, in the kitchen, the exact moment the chef piled an aggressively oversized, biologically unnecessary volume of food onto the plate.
That completely flips the paradigm. The waste has already happened. It is a sunk cost.
A biological sunk cost fallacy.
Exactly. Forcing yourself to swallow food your body does not need, physically pushing past your stomach's pain signals just to achieve the visual satisfaction of an empty plate, does not magically unwaste the food. It does not help anyone in the world.
All you're doing is transferring the burden of that excess from the restaurant's trash can directly into your own metabolic system, forcing your organs to deal with the overload.
You are treating your body like a biological garbage disposal.
So, to everyone listening, the next time you feel that pressure, reframe it. Leaving food on your plate is not a moral failing of wasting food. It is listening to your body's limits.
But of course, leaving food on your plate, requesting the dressing on the side, or passing on the bread basket, these decisions do not happen in a vacuum.
No, they happen at a table surrounded by other human beings with their own opinions, insecurities, and judgments.
Which introduces the most complex, nuanced layer of eating in the real world, the social and emotional dimensions.
Navigating a dinner table full of probing questions and subtle pressure is incredibly difficult.
It requires immense emotional intelligence. The very first piece of advice for navigating the social dimension is a firm warning. Don't become that person.
Oh, we all know that person. The individual who turns a joyful group dinner into a public demonstration of their diet.
The one loudly declaring why they can no longer consume gluten, dairy, or happiness.
We have to recognize that food is not merely fuel. Anthropologically, eating together is one of the oldest, most sacred forms of human bonding. It is culture, history, and affection.
Having strict personal dietary boundaries is essential, but transforming every communal meal into a public demonstration makes your companions incredibly uncomfortable and, ironically, creates an erotic relationship with food for yourself.
This becomes especially delicate when dealing with family dynamics. Think about visiting your grandmother. The food she prepares is heavily laden with emotional weight.
This is a critical distinction. When your grandmother spends hours preparing her signature lasagna, she is not serving you a collection of macronutrients. That dish is her history. It is her identity. It is her tangible expression of deep affection and care for you.
You cannot run your grandmother's lasagna through a calorie tracking app on your phone. If you try, you break the spirit of the event.
Engaging in that meal, receiving that affection, and being fully present holds a profound value. Enjoying that food without anxiety is completely compatible with a healthy life, provided it exists within the framework of your broader 80-20 consistency.
But how do we handle the direct, often unavoidable social pressure? You decline a heavy appetizer and immediately the comments start, "Oh, come on, one bite won't kill you," or "Are you on another diet again?"
This raises an important question. Why do they care what is on your plate? In the vast majority of cases, social pressure around food is not malicious. It stems from their own internal discomfort.
Really?
Yes. When you make a disciplined choice, you inadvertently act as a mirror. You force them subconsciously to reflect on their own choices. If they feel guilty about their own health, your discipline makes them feel judged, even if you haven't said a word.
So they try to peer pressure you to restore the social equilibrium. So what is our tactical response?
The most effective strategy is the low-profile approach. Deflect and minimize. Put a small amount of various foods on your plate so it visually appears full. If offered something you don't want, simply say, "That looks amazing, but I'm completely stuffed right now." Quietly, politely, stick to your principles without making a scene.
That covers the external social pressure. But we must also address the internal pressure, the overwhelming emotional dimension of eating. We need to talk about emotional eating, and we should start by completely destigmatizing it.
We must. People view emotional eating as a massive character flaw. But if we look at the biochemistry, emotional eating is a highly evolved, direct response to distress.
Let's track the biology of a stressful day. I'm at work, my boss yells at me, my inbox is overflowing. What is happening hormonally, and how does that lead to me staring at the vending machine at 3 p.m.?
When you perceive a threat, your body initiates a primal stress response. Crucially, your levels of cortisol, the primary stress hormone, begin to rise. Evolutionarily, cortisol signals the brain that it needs dense, immediate energy to survive the impending crisis.
So cortisol actively alters my appetite signaling.
Yes. Furthermore, prolonged stress can elevate ghrelin, the hormone that directly stimulates hunger. So you are biologically driven to seek food. But your brain isn't looking for celery sticks. It is specifically seeking foods that will rapidly regulate the emotional distress.
And the brain knows exactly which levers to pull to make the panic stop.
Consuming simple carbohydrates, sugars, and starches directly facilitates the synthesis of serotonin in the brain. Serotonin is a neurotransmitter heavily associated with feelings of calm. Simultaneously, the combination of sugar and fat triggers a massive release of dopamine in the brain's reward centers.
So when I am stressed and I reach for a cookie, it is not because I am weak-willed. It is because my brain is intelligently pulling highly effective biochemical levers to artificially induce a state of calm.
Exactly. Understanding this mechanism profoundly shifts the framework from shame to comprehension.
But the challenge is recognizing it in the moment. We need to be able to distinguish physical versus emotional hunger. I like to visualize this using a car dashboard analogy. True, physical hunger is like the fuel gauge slowly, predictably ticking down toward empty. You have time to plan. And almost any standard fuel will satisfy the tank. A piece of grilled chicken and some broccoli will solve the problem.
And how does emotional hunger present on the dashboard?
Emotional hunger is the check engine light. It doesn't tick down slowly. It flashes bright red instantaneously and without warning. It feels incredibly urgent. And the critical difference is you cannot turn off a check engine light by just pouring more standard fuel into the gas tank. Emotional hunger rejects the chicken and broccoli. It demands one specific, highly processed snack to turn off the alarm.
And the tragedy of emotional eating is that even when you consume that specific snack, the relief is fleeting because you didn't actually fix the engine. You just covered the flashing light with a piece of tape.
So practically speaking, when that check engine light starts flashing, how do we intervene?
The most powerful intervention from the text is a behavioral tool called creating a pause. When the sudden, overwhelming impulse strikes, your goal is simply to insert a small wedge of time between the stimulus and the response.
Just a few moments of delay.
Yes. You pause and you ask yourself, what am I actually experiencing right now? Is this sensation of hunger located physically as a gnawing in my stomach, or is it a vibrating tension entirely in my mind?
You're forcing your brain to run a diagnostic check.
And very often the pause reveals the truth. You are not hungry. You are exhausted. You are lonely. You are profoundly bored. You are anxious.
And once you identify the actual emotion, you can select the correct tool for the job. If you are exhausted, the tool is sleep. If you are anxious, the tool might be a walk outside.
Now, we must add a crucial note of compassion here. Occasional emotional eating is a universal human experience. But when emotional eating transitions into the primary coping mechanism, knowing when to seek a specialized psychologist is vital.
Because escalating emotional eating is not a dietary problem, it is a psychological pattern.
Precisely.
Which brings us to the final overarching perspective of our deep dive. Integrating these social strategies, managing your emotional responses, dismantling perfectionism, and respecting the biology of your plate. This entire ecosystem of habits is what determines whether a dietary approach lasts for a few miserable weeks or for the rest of your life.
We have to zoom on way out. We need a final overview of long-term patterns.
The summary points from the text are profound. Context over nutrients, environment over willpower. Sustainability is a strategy. Information frees you from guilt. Eating with loved ones is part of a well-lived life.
And there is a statistical truth about long-term health that should offer immense relief. When researchers study populations with the best long-term metabolic outcomes, they do not find people who live in a state of pristine perfection.
Right.
The data is clear. A person who eats well 85% of the time without anxiety has better long-term health outcomes than someone with a perfect diet for 3 months who then crashes.
So if I understand this correctly, the science is literally telling us that an imperfect meal in great company is actually a sign of nutritional success, not failure.
It is the ultimate proof that the system is functioning properly, because that flexibility proves the system is sustainable. The text frames sustainability as the only requirement for real effectiveness. If a nutritional strategy is incompatible with your real life, it is a failed strategy.
Which perfectly encapsulates the journey we've taken today. You, listening, now have the map of how energy, hormones, and the real world interact. The tools are in your hands. Let's briefly recap the core themes. We started by dumping perfectionism and embracing the 80-20 rule.
We established prioritizing protein and plants to hack our satiety.
We exposed the biological loopholes of liquid calories and respected the metabolic power of alcohol.
And we recognized the social and emotional weight of food, using the pause to navigate cravings.
It is a comprehensive toolkit designed specifically for the real world. But before we sign off, I want to leave you with one final provocative thought.
The text tells us that modifying your environment is more effective than reinforcing willpower. So consider this. If your kitchen and your office are the architects of your cravings, what is one item you can physically move, hide, or alter today so that your environment makes the 80% happen on autopilot?
I love that framework. Thank you so much for joining us on this deep dive. You possess the biological blueprint. Now go out there, eat in the real world, and actually enjoy the journey.